Everyone, Matt from Yuba Woodworking here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to turn something like this into this. So this is a little bit of calligraphy that I did over the summer. You'll notice I am not a professional level calligrapher. I am definitely not an artist. It was just a little bit of experimentation with the wood burning pencil to see what it looked like and what I could do with it. Turns out that I'm not the greatest of artists, which I kind of already knew, but I still wanted to try to make this into a nicer looking nameplate for my wife. You'll notice that it does have my wife's name on it. My name is not Beth. And my name is definitely Matt and not Beth. Although Yuba is named after my wife, you'll notice the Y-O-U, U, and then the B, that's for the Beth, and then Beth's middle name is Ann, and so U-B-A, Yuba. That's where that comes from. A little bit of a interesting fun fact if you didn't already know that. Alright, so the first step is to grab the sander and sand it down. So you'll see that, let's try to zoom in a little bit closely. The letters, when you burn it, it recesses into the wood. It's really hard to see, but wherever that burn is, there's kind of a little valley in the wood. So obviously if you sand it down too much, what's going to end up happening is the stuff that you've burned will disappear. So we want to avoid that. So I'll be sanding it down, then I'll put a finish over it, and then I'm going to put a protective coat on it because you can kind of see that the wood here is starting to split a little bit, and that's natural in plywood. That's all that this is a piece of scrap plywood. But if we can avoid it from happening in the future, let's try to do that. So you can see I couldn't really leave well enough alone, so I'll have to touch this up before I put any sort of finish down on it, so that's what I'm going to go do right now. Alright friends, I am back. You can see that I redid the parts that I sanded off. I touched some things up. I think it looks quite a bit nicer. I don't need to sand it again, at least at this stage. I will need to sand in between coats of the finish. I'll explain that as we get there. I added a Bible verse on the back for Beth. I just kind of freehanded that. It came out kind of cool. It's Romans 8:28, which says that God works all things together for the good of the believer, and even the things that we don't always understand, even the things that seem bad sometimes. When we take a step back from our lives, at the end of it, we'll be able to see that all those things worked out together for the good of the believer. A little bit of encouragement for Beth as she goes about her week. If she ever looks at the back of her nameplate, that is. So the next step is to put the stain on it. So I'm going to grab the stain, I'm going to get that ready. And alright, so I got my stain. I couldn't find my medium-sized brush, so I'm using a tiny brush, which is kind of annoying, but for the purpose of the video, the show must go on. You can see that I have this Minwax wood finish, penetrating stain, and the color that I chose for this is Golden Pecan 245. Look inside, and it looks kind of dark. I mean, the video quality isn't the greatest just because of the glare of the light there, but it looks really dark in the can, but in actuality, it goes on pretty smooth, and it's once it dries, it'll actually probably be pretty close to this color. What I have found is to get the look that I like, what I end up needing to do is put on 2 or 3 coats, which is fine. It's time consuming. So what you'll notice is that the video, this video is actually probably going to take 2 or 3 days to complete. So that little fast forward that you saw at the beginning is actually a photographic trick. Some trick photography. Actually, several days have probably passed between those two things, which is kind of cool. I like to have a little fun with my videos. But you can already tell that even after this partial first layer, there is a little bit of a change of color to the wood that'll soak into the wood. It ends up acting as a preservative to the wood. And then any natural discolorations in the wood will kind of pop out with this, which is pretty cool, I think. But then that dark burned color will contrast against it. All right, I'm back. It is the next day. You can see that it has completely dried. The grain in the wood has kind of separated the color. It might look weird to some people. I think it looks really cool. It's different layers of the grain. The back is even cooler the way that it's separated. It's looking pretty cool. And this is after just one coat. I did one coat on the top and one coat on the back. One thing to warn you about is if you just do the top coat, what you might find after you do the sides, because I was really careful to do the sides too, that you might have some seepage here on the back, which is why you do want to be careful to do both sides. So yeah, I let it dry overnight. Late last night I did the other side and I flipped it. So now the next step is we want to sand the whole thing. We want to use a very fine grit sandpaper, not as fine as we would if we were finishing something up on the lathe. Something like 220, maybe 350 or 400 would be perfect here. So I'm going to grab that and sand it down. Again, be really careful. You don't want to sand the lettering off. It's time to put down the layer of polyacrylic, and this is also made by Minwax. It's the same company that made the stain. Now, the first time I used this, I was really not impressed. I put down a layer of it, and I thought, oh man, that's kind of lame. You have to follow the directions on the can. You're supposed to put at least 3 coats down, and what I found is it really doesn't look all that good until you put that third coat down. So this is coat number 1. We put the coat on, we'll wait 2 hours. We will lightly sand after those 2 hours are up. We'll wipe it down with a wet cloth again, wait another 10-15 minutes for it to dry, then come back for round number 2. So for this last part, I wanted to make sure that we got outside in the sunlight. This is not wet at all. It is completely dry. You can see that that little glare that it has to it. It's very shiny. When it catches the different parts of the sunlight, it really has a nice kick to it. The stain that is behind the polyacrylic finish really highlights the wood, and of course the parts that are burnt. They have a special emphasis on them because of the polyacrylic that's on it. The back has 1 layer instead of the 3 layers of polyacrylic on it. It's still kind of nice. Not as many people will see the back, but it really, even that 1 layer looks pretty nice on this stained piece of wood. So if you're not using the Minwax polyacrylic, whatever you have will have its own specific instructions. Just make sure you follow them. If you don't do the 3 layers of the polyacrylic like the directions say, you can really tell, and it doesn't look quite as nice. Alright, that's all I have for today. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Hit that like button if it was, and feel free to subscribe. If you have any things that you'd like to see in future videos, just let me know. Thanks. Bye.